make some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Sunday, June 8th, 2025, and I got up early just to get this show out because I thought, my gosh, I can't just skip a day just because I have a tournament. I can't do that. So here we are, and there's a ton of stuff that happened yesterday. It's well worth the discussion today. Yesterday, well, we'll talk about LA in a minute. Public housing is not for Canadians, or not for specific Canadians. We'll talk about some anecdotal stories that have been uncovered. And people, what's happening is DEI is removing people of a specific skin color from the rolls and the lists of who's eligible, and they're not even informing people that they're being removed from the list. So that's pretty dicey. I don't know about all of that, but I'm not surprised considering what else is going on. Universal basic income has been introduced in the Senate, and I'm not surprised again here either. These economic tools, quote unquote tools, don't work, and we're being it's very expensive for a very bad outcome. And universal basic income sounds good on paper, but doesn't work in a practical sense, right? It doesn't work in practice, in reality. And so when this idea meets reality, it fails. And we have evidence to that as well. There are places that started these things and then the trials end, and that's that. But fundamentally, we're being managed with all of these make work projects to keep us busy from focusing on the important things like who's running our government right now, because it sure as crap ain't us. Musk and Bessent fight, one of the economists, Bessent, I can't remember what his position is, but he's a very high up position with Trump, and they got into a pushing match. So we'll talk about that later on. And we've got to start at the LA riots today. And it's very, very interesting to see the escalation. And I feel like, well, Liz says that she thinks this is a sleeper cell has been activated in Los Angeles. And I think that's very, very plausible. There are interesting things going on here. A big mob of people surrounded a federal building and were demanding that they come out and release some people who had been arrested, I guess. The protesters were assaulting ICE agents, and I've got video of all this stuff. So it's really crazy. The National Guard has been activated. The Marines are on standby. It's a whole big deal. Is Snake Plissken going to be sent in, right? Battlefield Los Angeles? There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Colin says, just in, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino calls for the public to help identify a man throwing rocks at vehicles in Los Angeles where federal agents are conducting raids. So here is the video. And so the unmarked cars are driving down the road, and these guys have either been harvesting big chunks of concrete to throw at cars through breaking up walls, breaking up trash cans, all sorts of stuff. Or there's pallets of bricks and things like that around that they're using to throw at cops and ICE agents. Weird, right? Same tactics. And if you've been paying any attention, you recognize these tactics. So here's this. Los Angeles. So there's the guy throwing, he's picking up the concrete, throwing it at the windshield. And I mean, like, it's cracking the windshield. It's crazy. I don't understand. Nobody's stopping to stop this guy, which I find, I mean, maybe they're busy, right? Maybe they're going somewhere else. But wouldn't that be a hot spot? A guy, like, you get your window shattered, I'd maybe pull over and be like, hey, guy, get in the back. You're under arrest, right? Like, finger guns. It seems odd. It seems weird. America AF says arrest every last one of these scumbags assaulting ICE agents. So you can see there's people assaulting the ICE. This woman. And she got arrested. So she assaulted an agent and got arrested. And so there are well, I don't know, arrested. She got put down on the ground by 2 agents who were being assaulted by her. So very interesting stuff happening there. I was going to start the show by saying, British Patriot says Ireland is on the brink of becoming the first country in Europe to plunge into a full-blown civil war over immigration. LA says, hold my beer. But it might not be that, which is why we started the way we did. The government and police are struggling to maintain order in major cities as protesters and acts of civil disobedience escalate. The Irish have had enough. So here is, I don't know which city this is in Ireland, but a police officer tries to arrest somebody, and then people are not having any of it.
Get them off him! Get them off him! Get them off him! Get off him! Get off him! Get off him! Get off him! You fucking scumbag bastard! Fucking hell, that shit.
So there you go. That's what's going on in Ireland, right? Very interesting. Did you see the ladies at the end crossing the street? They're like, "Oh, we're not here for the riot. We're just going to we're going to the Safeway." So there you go. Safeway's a grocery store there. Google says we need George says we need mass deportations in Los Angeles. Back to LA. These are people who have taken over a whole intersection and have lit a car on fire, as far as I understand the news coverage. Yeah, they're lighting a car. This guy's narrating the car being lit on fire.
And there's some sort of smoke grenade that's been placed inside of that vehicle. Something is smoking. That's dark smoke inside that vehicle. So we very well may be seeing the start of a vehicle fire, and it looks like we are. This thing is lighting up, and that's pretty much, police are going to have, presumably, fire crews are going to have to presumably move in and take control of this situation.
That's not happening yet.
Dangerous. Again, this is the intersection of Alondra Boulevard and Atlantic Avenue in Compton, California. Dale's Donuts is that big donut on your screen. And this vehicle fire, this fire is taking off. Again, we're seeing this in real time. And we have no idea how this started, why this started. Time will tell. Let's put the 2 box back up so that we can hear some audio.
So there you go. There's what's going on in LA. Later, Liz says sleeper cells in Los Angeles activated. So maybe, right? Burn it down. Order 66, if you will. Here's Nick. He says Tom Homan announces that the Trump administration is deploying the National Guard. Here we go.
And, like I said many times, these elected officials or these non-government organizations, they can't cross the line either. I mean, we got people like, Hakeem Jeffries saying he's going to dox ICE employees, ICE agents out there with masks on. They're wearing masks to protect themselves and their families because they've been doxxed, their families been doxxed, their life's been threatened, their families have been threatened. I know myself, I had over 1,000 protesters at my house. I expect that as the borders are, but these men and women are putting their lives online every day. They arrested a lot of bad people yesterday and today. They arrested child sex offenders. They arrested people convicted of robbery. They arrested public safety, not only significant public safety threats, but national security threats. They arrested gang members. We're making Los Angeles safer. And Mayor Bass ought to be thanking us for making her city safer. And the term migrant, as Joe Concha rightfully said earlier, they're illegal aliens. There are illegal aliens in this country, and we welcome. We're the most giving country in the world. But these are illegal aliens who committed a crime by crossing this border illegally, then yet committed another crime. Again, yesterday's about a criminal investigation into money laundering, tax evasion, and some of the funds going to cartels in Mexico and Colombia that fund their operations of sending narcotics to this country, killing American people. This is about enforcing the law. And again, we're not going to apologize for doing it. We're stepping up. She says they're going to mobilize. Well, guess what? We're already ahead of the game. We're already mobilizing. We're going to bring National Guard in tonight. We're going to continue doing our job. We're going to push back on these people, and we're going to enforce the law.
Tom, it's...
So there you go. Trump tweeted, and I don't have the tweet. There's a bunch of the things that I saved didn't save, and I'm on a tight schedule this morning, so I didn't go get it, so apologies. But Right Angle News says Border Czar Tom Homan has just confirmed that the National Guard will be deployed to Los Angeles tonight to reestablish order after the Democrats seized control during violent ICE raids. I don't know about Democrats. Here is, so again, there were a whole bunch of my tabs that didn't save for whatever reason, or sometimes the things get deleted or whatever. But there were federal buildings that were surrounded by protesters. There were building car fires, all sorts of disturbances. And the response was this from the federal agencies, police, etc.
They're coming out. They're coming out. They're coming out. Watch out! Fuck you!
There you go, right? So the police came out shooting, or whoever. I don't know if it's actually police or National Guard. I don't know what group that is, but I think it said police. I think one of the shields actually said police, but still, it's interesting. And the guy with the camera laughing, I don't think those were bullets that were deadly. I think they were crowd suppression bullets, like rubber bullets or something like that. But still, not nice, I don't think, to get hit with. And that guy was laughing, and I thought, oh, well, that's kind of weird. Nick says illegals have taken over the streets of Los Angeles and are assaulting law enforcement while waving foreign flags. This is the definition of an invasion. Representative Riley Moore says military-age men marching under foreign flags is an invasion. Every one of them has to go. Yeah, it's a concerning situation, right? Anthony said, I've discovered pallets of cement bricks within striking distance of the ICE agents. There's no other pallets around. Some are in back of the gate, but these are in front of the gate. I'm told protesters use these cement bricks to throw at ICE agents. So, giant pallets of bricks. Do you remember that? I remember that from the first Trump administration. And it was protesters in Washington, and pallets of bricks just showed up and the bricks got thrown. Here's Data Republican, and she says, who's behind the anti-ICE riots in Los Angeles? Hundreds took to the streets this weekend, blocking roads, attacking federal officers, even burning flags, but this wasn't spontaneous outrage. This was organized, funded, coordinated. Here's a breakdown of the groups, the money, and the people pulling the strings. Patience as I assemble the thread and verify information in real time. So she goes through it. A number of NGOs have been implicated in this. Foremost is a Coalition for Human Immigration Rights, or CHIRLA, and the photos of signs show they were printed by this group, Party for Socialism and Liberation. It's communism. Shirla has the EIN of blah, blah, blah. Most of its private funding appears to be from DAFs, which are the hardest to trace. However, 34 million of its reported 45 million in revenue are from government grants. Whew, I'm shocked. In the most recent year, Shirla jumped from 12 million to 34 million in government grants. Nice. However, this is probably from California only, 450,000 in federal grants. So there's a bigger breakdown, and I'll leave the link if you want to go through it all. It's my main point is this is not an organic protest. This is not the people rising up against Donald Trump. This is people who are being paid, and possibly an Order 66 that was engaged and pushing this. And it's a riot. And, well, as I said, the Marines are on deck to come in if Trump and Homan deem it necessary. And I think the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, is in the whole thing as well. Here, you guys want to see this guy do an Irish jig? I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding. This is an African-looking dude doing very hold on, we'll see. Oh my gosh, it's gonna do this. It's only 26 seconds, so we may have to endure. I'm gonna refresh it, and you'll see how crazy this is. But this is from Londonderry, Ireland. Okay. Why wouldn't they play the music? Irish jig in a minute.
mama.
Who taught him to do the Irish jig? At the end, I almost wasn't going to show the video because I thought, this is just a weird thing to do in Ireland, right? But then he does the Irish jig, and I thought, I can't not show this thing. So, isn't that cultural appropriation? What is happening? Isn't that bad? He's not allowed to do that. Rupert says, this is Rupert Lowe, he's an MP in England. He says, let's just stop importing legally and illegally thousands of young men from alien cultures who don't respect women, will never contribute, and essentially hate Britain. Let's just stop doing that. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Caroline says, this thread will probably get me arrested, but I don't care because someone has to say it. The UK is now investigating people worried about mass immigration as potential terrorists, not jihadis, not hate preachers, concerned parents, ordinary Brits. Read for yourself. This is the Prevent thing I talked about yesterday, but Prevent, the UK's anti-terror program, is flagging Brits who express concern about mass immigration. No incitement, not violence, just concern. That's now a warning sign for extremism. Orwell wasn't fiction, it was a manual. War is peace, freedom is slavery, concern is extremism. Welcome to Britain 2025. The rules are upside down. If you question immigration, you're radicalized. If you mention grooming gangs, you're hateful. If you love your country, you're far right. You're the threat now. That's because the communists are in charge, and if you want to run your own country, you represent a threat to their power. That's why it's inverted, because anybody who says, this doesn't make any sense, you're stealing my money to send it to Ukraine, this doesn't make sense, you're stealing my money to put foreigners up in hotels, they say, whoa, 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 that's very extremist sounding of you, right? That's very alt-right sounding of you, because you represent a threat to their power. Because if you got power, you wouldn't do those things, and well, they want to continue doing those things, threat to their power, right? Meanwhile, hate preachers are tolerated, open borders are praised, national identity is erased, real threats are ignored. This isn't safety, it's control. You're not allowed to ask, where did my culture go? Or why are our cities unrecognizable? Why is the truth now dangerous? Because you're not supposed to notice. I might get a knock on the door for this thread, but if we all speak out, what can they do? If caring about your kid's future makes you a terrorist, then we're governed by extremists. If this terrifies you, retweet, quote, they're afraid of the truth, screenshot, etc., etc. Here's Rupert again, and he says, I don't understand why our establishment is so keen to protect Islam. And here he is talking about that.
I don't understand why our establishment is so keen to protect Islam. I mean, it's one of many religions, and I don't think any religion should be singled out for any special treatment. If you have a society that believes in free speech and that does poke fun at things and does challenge things and does debate whether something's right or wrong, there should be no exceptions. It should be for every religion, every faith, every politician, every public servant, whoever. They should all be, and they should all face the same challenge from a society which ultimately is seeking the truth. And you don't get at the truth by suppressing free speech. You don't get at the truth by bullying people into silence. I think we've seen that throughout history. I don't understand why.
Well, I don't think we're anywhere near the truth, to be quite honest with you. So in the scope of why are we importing all of these people, why are we not allowed to speak out about it, et cetera, this is a councillor in Milton, Ontario, and this is a video that he released yesterday, 2 days ago. See if you can see my concern. I think it's apparent right away. Oh, it's going to do this. Gosh, I'll just refresh. You'll see.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is your regional councillor Sami Ijaz. Eid al-Adha Mubarak. ये वक्त है reflection, कुर्बानी और शुक्रगुजारी का जो हमें हज़रत इब्राहीम अलैहिस्सलाम की मजबूत यकीन और value.
Right? What? What's he saying? This is a councillor from Milton, right? Celebrating Eid, etc., etc. Is this acceptable? Why do we do this, right? So what is going on here? Regional councillor Sami Ijaz is the Milton councillor for Ward 3. So is that what you want your councillors to be doing? It seems very, very strange that I can't understand what a councillor in Milton, Ontario is talking about. Weird. right? Makes me feel like a foreigner in my own country. Seems weird, doesn't it? Here is a UK. This guy's a guy in the UK. I don't know if he's a British army guy, but he's saying that people are not going along with this garbage now. Like, it's not happening. Sorry, everyone. So here is this guy talking about British army leaving the ranks because they don't want to go and freeze in Russia, freeze and die for Ukraine, basically.
It's been reported that British soldiers and British troops are signing off en masse. And basically what that means is that they're stepping down. And the reason this is happening is because they will not fight for Starmer, and they will not fight in the Ukraine-Russian war, which is clearly a proxy war used to funnel billions into very, very wealthy men and women's pockets. And I think it's great to see our armed forces should not be sent there to die in the name of some EU, NATO movement. It's got nothing to do with us. So good on these troops. And also for the public, if conscription comes in, do not fight for this regime. They are dictators, they are communists. We will not die for them. We will rather be put in a nice warm prison with 3 meals a day. We're not going to minus 20 degrees conditions to be shot at by the Russians. Thank you, Starmer, for your offer, but we all think you're a prick. Anyway, I think it's very good that the army are doing this. Good on the boys. They're absolutely heroic in my eyes as it is. And we don't need to lose them. We don't need them dying in the name of this mad politician.
So he carries on. But yeah, I don't think people have their eyes closed to what's going on. Neil Oliver, who's used to be on GB News, I don't think he is anymore, says nothing will change until people stop voting and start disobeying. Sounds like my messaging too. Sounds like voting our way out of this seems less and less likely by the day, right? Let's talk about housing. Bruce says, this is life in BC under the NDP. The Cole Road rest stop is an encampment. No room for truckers who need to rest by law. If you have an RV, using the sandy dump is virtually impossible. Who else thinks this needs to be cleaned up? Yeah, it's been ignored. Our politicians ignore it. They don't talk about it.
Well, everybody, I'm here at the Cole Road Rest Center. This is a place where people are supposed to come by and be able to rest, where truck drivers are supposed to be able to stop and rest. And it's become an encampment. This is what Ravi Kahlon and our Minister of Transportation, Mike Farnworth, think is okay. They think that this is acceptable, that this is how people should live. And actually, there was burnt out trailers here, but there's a pile of them and a bulldozer down at the end of the way that took care of those. This is no way for anyone to live. This is right on Highway number 1. This is what Americans and tourists see on their way into beautiful British Columbia. Welcome to the most beautiful province in Canada. This is life underneath the NDP government, and this is what Ravi Kahlon thinks is acceptable housing. And you'll see one of them is actually running a business here, and there'll be a sign of that in a bit.
So there you go. Pretty wild stuff going on in BC, but it's happening everywhere. Here is what's going on Steve says, how many Canadian families do you know got a free house? Glorious day. Ambitious Habitat Project welcomes 4 new families. And the picture is of women in hijab and burqas. And so weird. Who got the house? Here is bizarre, and they say, I waited 9 years in BC for accessible housing, only to find out that I was removed from the list after just a couple of years. No explanation was given, and because I'm not a whiny little bitch, you constantly constantly called and badgered them. They felt justified in removing me from the list. So he's saying, he's making one claim, but this guy's fleshing it out a bit. He says, when I became disabled, social workers helped me apply for housing in Toronto and a neighboring city, Peel region. For Peel, I was told the wait was 4 to 6 years. It took 2 days with the social worker to file the applications and paperwork with Toronto Central Housing. Peel would call me every year to confirm I was still eligible and interested in a place. Then after 10 years, I realized they had stopped calling. I called them and was given the runaround. They tried to tell me that they had no file on me, except I had a copy of the application in my hand. Then they blew me off with an excuse about how long the wait list is. So I went up on their website and found a lot of bragging about adopting DEI, and making up new race-based wait lists to make sure the right marginalized people were getting priority for housing. They were also bragging about getting rid of the wrong, non-marginalized staff members. I found yearly board meeting reports where they talked about getting rid of white people from the wait list. In 1 year, they ditched 550 people. I also found reports of staff meetings which were run by an outside consultant which specialized in helping companies adopt DEI and purge white staff and customers. I looked up the consultant's website and found they charged millions to government agencies to teach them how to adopt DEI and purge white staff without being caught or sued. This is a non-profit housing provider, by the way. Guess who they got the money from? I demanded a full copy of my file under privacy laws as evidence that I'd been kicked off the waitlist because of my race. I had to ask twice. Then they provided me with a redacted copy of my file. I consulted a lawyer who told me I'd have to sue them to get the full copy, and I couldn't afford it. I wanted to file a human rights complaint. That's when I found out that I'm the wrong race to file such a complaint. I wanted to file a complaint with the Ontario Ministry of Housing. That's when I found their website was full of instructional materials telling subsidized housing providers how to adopt DEI and ordering them to do it. I followed up with Toronto as well. After they wasted 45 minutes of my time on the phone grilling me about my sexual orientation, gender identity, immigration status, and race, they finally told me I'd never applied. So crazy, right? This is an anecdotal story, but it seems like it is much more broad as well. Prime Minister of Canada, let's do our grab bag of governance. And the Prime Minister of Canada says today, Prime Minister Carney announced the priorities that will guide the 2025 G7 Leaders Summit in Kaneskis, Alberta, where Canada will work with reliable partners to meet challenges with unity, purpose, and shared prosperity. So the goals in these 3 helpful slides, because one of them is just a title slide. It's weird. So are protecting the communities in the world. We are. With what military? Okay, the world, eh? We don't even have sleeping bags or ammunition. And I'm convinced that we save money by not doing training because training would require gassing up the tanks and things like that. And that's real expensive. Have you seen the price of gas? So I think that we're not equipped to be protecting the world. Building energy security and accelerating the digital transition. What does that mean? Digital transition, security, energy security, and digital transition. Securing the partnerships of the future, which means ignoring the partnerships of the past. Screw you, the United States. Hello, Europe, says Mark Carney. Anybody want to go die in Ukraine? Because it sounds like the Brits don't want to. It's very exotic there. Here is Mark Carney from yesterday saying Muslim values are Canadian values. Lots of pushback on that yesterday. People didn't like that. Joe says, I really don't care what he's saying, but just so we're crystal clear, the Prime Minister is speaking here as the guest of an organization that the Canada Revenue Agency alleged was a Canadian front for Hamas. So the Muslim Association of Canada is where Mark Carney said Muslim values are Canadian values. So, weird, right? Don't you think that's weird? I think that's weird. Vesper says it's funny how the governments of the world wanted a division between church and state, but then go on preaching to the masses about religious duty and what they should think and do. I thought each was supposed to stay in their own lane. What happened? We're being manipulated is what happened by communists. That's what happened, I think. Parody Stephen Gelbo. So this is a joke, just to make sure any Canadian government officials watching don't get their bee in a bonnet. In honor of Muslim values being Canadian values, Mel Jolie got permission from her husband to give a speech on women's rights today. She then attended the wedding of her husband with his 4th wife. Tonight, she's doing dishes with wives 2 and 3, while wife 4 learns the ropes, right? And then the picture of Mel Jolie is in a hijab. And so that's funny, right? Like, funny. Because are Muslim values Canadian values? No, I don't think so. Pretty sure not, right? And it's funny also that Mark Carney is a Catholic, or is he? Right? You have to wonder. I wonder. Here's Dan McTeague. He says he's responding to Catherine. Catherine says, as an employment lawyer who represents fired employees, I get an interesting preview as to how the economy is doing. It's bad, folks. Dan says really bad, like 1981 bad. That's worst in 43 years, right? 43, 44 years. How old am I? Darn it. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. Larry Brock, who's a conservative MP, is celebrating GC's strategies being banned from government contracts for 7 years. He says our conservative team's diligent prosecution of these fraudsters has paid off. GC Strategies is finally banned from doing business with the federal government for 7 years. And the Buck UL says, wait, what? So we should just accept this? And what? That's it? What about getting our money back and maybe some jail time? Are we just a charity for liberal criminals? Never mind, because the answer is yes. Our mainstream media is the enemy of democracy, says communism. Gov.exe says Mark Carney, and the finance minister Champagne and the Liberal Party said that they want to merge 13 economies into one and build it into the strongest economy in the G7. What's the word that best describes the centralization of power and control over a nation's economy? And these guys say communism. Yes, that's what they want. That's the goal, I think, unfortunately. Here is the Senate introducing the Bill S-206, which is a new push for universal basic income. It's 40 minutes. It's a 40-minute clip, so I'm not going to play that clip today. But this guy says, if you're a Canadian, you have to see this. This isn't just politics. This is real life stuff. Senator Kim Pate just introduced Bill S-206, a new push for basic income in Canada. This means that if you've ever felt stuck, burnt out, or like the system doesn't see people like you, we already have a universal healthcare. Now imagine a future where we also have income stability. Watch what happens next, and don't let this one slide by. Yeah, it'll just cause inflation. It would just cause inflation by the amount of money injected into the economy by this universal basic income. Rent would skyrocket. I think rent would cost a lot more. Shannon says, watch this liberal Gatineau MP try and tell me what to do when I tell him that companies won't invest in Canada. Here we go.
That rhetoric and their photo ops don't matter. Actions do. And the truth is, no private sector pipelines will get built to coasts with shipping and drilling bans. Companies won't build pipelines while this government is the only one in the world to cap Canadian oil and gas and carbon taxes Canadian industries while the U.S. and others don't. They won't kill the anti-development Bill C-69 that premiers, Indigenous leaders, the private sector, and the Supreme Court oppose. Plus, they say there has to be consensus, but they alone will define what's in the national interest. Why won't they just repeal all their anti-energy laws so Canadian workers can at least...
The Honourable Government House Leader.
You know, Madam Speaker, sometimes she talks about concrete actions. Well, that member, for one rare occasion, gets to not just simply criticize, but gets to stand up. Stand up for workers. Stand up for the government of Alberta. Stand up for all of the premiers and all of the territories in this country. Stand up for workers, unions, for businesses, for people who want to build this country, who want to create opportunity in this country to do major projects and build a Canada strong. Will that member stand up and do something for once?
Well, that's not true, right? Like the anti-pipeline bill and all of the other bills that Shannon Stubbs mentioned are reasons that it's not happening, and it likely won't happen, not in the near future, not at all. Here's Wab Kinew, and he wants a pipeline from Hudson Bay to Tidewater, and so Clinton says Manitoba NDP Premier Wab Kinew tells Manitobans and all Canadians the best way for Canada to become an international energy superpower is through Hudson Bay's Tidewater port. He also believes Hudson Bay's energy port terminal can help make Manitoba a have province instead of a have not province. So there you go. I'm not going to play it because I really have to go. Dale says, in my haste, I was sloppy and should have stated that Lawton was accused of putting out a edited video accusation of the editing withdrawn, but Dale was lying about what's going on with the exchange between Andrew Lawton and the public safety minister, who didn't know any of the gun laws in Canada and who has deep ties to Tamil terrorists, which is interesting. He's lying about it. He says Lawton says the minister doesn't know gun laws. Assange congratulates him on his Adobe editing skills to put out trash on the internet. Lawton put out an edited video on Twitter, and Lawton actually didn't. So Andrew Lawton says, blatant lie from a parliamentary press gallery reporter. My video of me questioning Minister Anasangari, that guy's last name is a nightmare for me, had no edits, let alone mendacious. Waiting for a retraction, Journo Dale. So the retraction came, but what a D-bag. Adobe is increasing its cost, and it's now $1,100 a year. Holy cow. Nikki was saying, hiring a designer to help with marketing your business, a small reminder that creatives can no longer purchase their own software. As of today, the cost of renting software from Adobe has increased to $1,152 a year. You'll own nothing and be happy. Huh. You have no choice because you can't own anything because it's all subscription based, right? This was interesting. Cargo ship is burning, carrying 300 EVs, it says 300 vehicles, but it's EVs, right? So that's very, very interesting. The ship had to be abandoned. 22 crew members were safely evacuated from the ship after they failed to put out the fire, and they're just monitoring the fire. The Coast Guard's monitoring the fire. They're letting it burn. There you go. So yeah, the Alaskan, what's it called? It's the Morning Midas, right? So morning gold, Jeepers Creepers. Unbelievable stuff. With this, I don't think these EVs are going to work, guys. I think these products have a fatal flaw in them. I'm not sure. Here is the Bessent. What's his name? I think I've got his name wrong. Bessent. So here's what's going on. Derek says, holy smoke. It's now being reported that Elon Musk and Scott Bessent got into a physical altercation. Scott said, "You're a fraud. You're a total fraud," Bannon said in an interview. Musk then rammed his shoulder into Bessent's rib cage like a rugby player, Bannon said, and Bessent hit him back. Multiple people stepped in to break up the scrum as the two men reached the National Security Advisor's office, and Musk was shuffled out of the West Wing. President Trump heard about it and said, "This is too much," Bannon said. So yeah, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. Lots of crazy stuff going on. Elon Musk fighting. I can't remember what Bessent's position is. It's a high power position. I can't remember which one it is. You can't rugby check somebody. You can't like put your shoulder into somebody. Like that's not cool. Even if you don't like him, you just don't buy that person coffee, right? No, just kidding. That's very passive aggressive, right? Oh, I didn't know you were here today. Right? You shouldn't do that. That's not very nice. But it's very interesting what's going on, and we'll see how this Musk thing plays out. I still think that it's wrestling. I still think that we're watching a play, and I don't know that, not that it's not real, but I don't know. There's things about it that make me think, we're watching something play out, and there's a reason for it. Maybe I don't get it yet, but maybe I will in the future. I'm not sure. These LA riots are pretty crazy. So man, lots going on, and well, I'll keep watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Again, no kitchen table talk for today, and that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.